This series begins on a rainy night with a young guy named Tu Wen-sui. At that time, he's standing on a cliff, about to throw away a suitcase with someone else's body inside it. After the suitcase falls into the sea, something strange happens to him. Now let's talk about the person in the suitcase, Ugly Wen-sui. When he was a kid, he was overweight and got picked on by his friends, which made him feel really insecure. 10 years later, he moves to a new high school in Binhai City, hoping for a fresh start. Before school starts, he takes pictures of the school building. But on his way home, he accidentally drops his phone under a girl named Mo Han-ki's skirt, and people think he did it on purpose. This leads to some misunderstandings about him. In high school, there were some boys, including Li Zhanchong, who had a crush on Man-ki. They were upset and ready to confront a guy named Ugly Wen-sui on the bus because they thought he wasn't paying attention to his phone, which he hadn't even taken out yet. When Man-ki and her friend, Tao Kao, got off the bus, they checked Ugly Wen-sui's phone but didn't find anything suspicious, and then they realized they had made a mistake. On the other hand, a friend of Ugly Wen-sui, who had been bullying him, purposely posted a video of the bullying online. This made Ugly Wen-sui lose confidence and even think about doing something drastic, like jumping from a building during the Lantern Festival. When Ugly Wen-sui fell, Wa-ck and his friends tried to help, but strangely, he seemed fine even though he had fallen from a height. Ugly Wen-sui, who had regained consciousness, hurried back home. At the same time, Handsome Wen-sui was found unconscious in an alley. After Ugly Wen-sui got back to his room and went to sleep, something strange happened. His soul woke up in the body of Handsome Wen-sui, who was walking home and was surprised to see his other body, Ugly Wen-sui, still sleeping. The next morning, Wen-sui woke up in Ugly Wen-sui's body, and he realized he could switch between two bodies with one soul. If one body was unconscious, he could move to the other. Not long after, Tao Kao showed up to return his lost phone and apologize for what happened on the bus. During their conversation, they discovered they lived in the same building, with Tao Kao's room downstairs. A few days later, Wen-sui decided to use his handsome body to attend his new school. To his surprise, he ended up in the same class as Tao Kao and Zhan Chang, the students who had confronted him on the bus. His good looks caught the attention of many girls, but Tao Kao didn't seem too interested. During break time, Tao Kao told Man-ki that the handsome Wen-sui had the same name as her neighbor from upstairs. This made her suspicious that he might be the same person as the Ugly Wen-sui, especially when they both took the same bus route. She thought he might live nearby or know the Ugly Wen-sui she was familiar with. To keep his true identity a secret, Handsome Wen-sui chose to walk a different way home to avoid raising suspicion that he lived in the same place as Ugly Wen-sui. When Tao Kao got home, she immediately called Ugly Wen-sui to ask why he hadn't transferred to her school. Since Handsome Wen-sui hadn't switched bodies yet, he had to answer the call and explained that he was still sick and needed to rest. At that time, Tao Kao took the initiative to give him some medicine. This made Handsome Wen-sui hurry to his room to switch back to his ugly body. Luckily, he woke up in time to meet Tao Kao, who had brought him the medicine. In the evening, Heina, one of Handsome Wen-sui's classmates, was doing a live broadcast and wanted to invite him as a guest star. She called Wen-sui's phone, but it turned out to be Ugly Wen-sui who answered, which annoyed her, and she asked her friend to end the live broadcast. On another day, Handsome Wen-sui went to a store to ask about job openings, pretending it was for his friend, as he planned to work using Ugly Wen-sui's body. The store owner, Mr. Ma, told him they needed part-time employees. However, when Ugly Wen-sui applied for the job, Mr. Ma treated him poorly and refused, unlike how he had treated Handsome Wen-sui. Because of this, the next day, Wen-sui used his handsome body to talk to Heina, who happened to be Mr. Ma's daughter. There, he convinced her to persuade her father to hire Ugly Wen-sui for a part-time job. Heina agreed on the condition that Handsome Wen-sui fulfilled her request. Without hesitation, he accepted all the conditions and attended her party that night. During the party, Handsome Wen-sui suddenly had to go home to switch bodies with Ugly Wen-sui, who had to start working at the main market. At the same time, Tao Kao saw him entering Ugly When Sui's room and became suspicious, thinking he might be up to no good. But Handsome When Sui explained that he was a friend of Ugly When Sui, and Tao Kao trusted him, so they swapped bodies. A little while later, Ugly When Sui began working as a guard at Mr. Ma's minimarket. Then, one of When Sui's classmates, Zheng Zihao, came to the minimarket and informed Zan Chang about Ugly When Sui's whereabouts. At that time, Zan Chang was still upset with Ugly When Sui for what happened on the bus when he accidentally dropped his phone under Man Ki's skirt. Soon after, Zan Chang and his friends went to the minimarket to confront Ugly When Sui, but fortunately, CK and his friends stepped in to stop them and helped Ugly When Sui. The next day at school, Tao Kao learned about Zan Chang being beaten up at the minimarket and met Handsome When Sui to ask about Ugly When Sui's condition. She also mentioned that Zan Chang was a boxer and had attacked Ugly When Sui because of the incident on the bus. After hearing this explanation, Handsome When Sui assured her that Ugly When Sui was okay. After school, Handsome When Sui had to deal with his grandmother's visit, who wanted to see her grandson. Realizing he couldn't reveal his secret to his grandmother, he pretended to be a friend of Ugly When Sui and asked her to wait in another room while he changed bodies. Luckily, he managed to switch bodies just before his grandmother entered the room. When she saw Handsome When Sui asleep in bed, Ugly When Sui explained that he had a strange illness that caused him to suddenly fall asleep. After a chat, his grandmother gave some pocket money to Ugly When Sui, but he hesitated to accept it. Unbeknownst to him, Tao Kao saw this from afar. When his grandmother left, Tao Kao talked to Ugly When Sui to understand why he refused the money. He explained that he felt uncomfortable taking money earned by his grandmother, who worked hard selling food all day. Hearing this, Tao Kao tried to encourage him and wondered why she treated him kindly, even though many people avoided him. She remembered her own childhood experiences of being teased for her weight, and that's why she could empathize with the sadness Ugly When Sui felt from being bullied by others. On a different day, Handsome When Sui had a plan to get Tao Kao's attention in the cafeteria by paying for Zihao's meal. But when she noticed his wallet, it turned out to be the same as Ugly When Sui's wallet. This made her suspect that Handsome When Sui might have stolen it. After leaving the cafeteria, Handsome When Sui was heading to the restroom when CK and his friends approached him. They deliberately took When Sui's wallet and asked him to come to CK's boxing training area after school. Despite feeling scared, Handsome When Sui decided to go to CK's training area to get back his wallet. But when he got there, CK said he wouldn't return the wallet unless Handsome When Sui could beat him in a boxing match. Reluctantly, he accepted the challenge, and surprisingly, he managed to fight using his good-looking body and defeated CK, even though he had never practiced boxing or any other martial arts before. After getting his wallet back and returning home, Handsome When Sui was surprised to find Tao Kao in his room looking for Ugly When Sui. She confirmed that the wallet he had been using belonged to Ugly When Sui. Despite his attempts to calm Tao Kao and send her home, she insisted on meeting Ugly When Sui. So Handsome When Sui had to hide so he could switch bodies. At the same time, Tao Kao, who had entered the room with CK, saw that Ugly When Sui was sleeping and had trouble waking up. Fortunately, before they could take him to the hospital, Ugly When Sui woke up. Tao Kao immediately asked about the wallet that Handsome When Sui used at school. Ugly When Sui explained that he had willingly lent the wallet to Handsome When Sui. Despite this confession, Tao Kao and CK said their goodbyes to go home. However, they were still not completely convinced and thought that Handsome When Sui might have pressured Ugly When Sui to lend him the money. The next day at school, CK and his friends accidentally approached Handsome When Sui and invited him to the school rooftop. On the rooftop, CK grabbed Handsome When Sui's shoulder as a warning, telling him not to bother Ugly When Sui. Handsome When Sui tried to explain that he hadn't done anything wrong to Ugly When Sui, and finally, CK let him go. Shortly afterward, Handsome When Sui and Hao went to the restroom to check on When Sui's shoulder and talk about CK. During their conversation, Zan Chang and his group suddenly entered the restroom and forced Handsome Wen Sui to leave. Zan Chang then demanded 2,000 yuan from Zi Hao the next day, threatening to beat him if he couldn't provide the money. Because of this threat after school, Zi Hao asked Handsome Wen Sui to borrow some money. He promised to repay the debt as soon as he sold his limited edition shoes. When Handsome Wen Sui heard this, he believed that Zi Hao had been pressured by Zan Chang, but Zi Hao continued to try to cover it up as he walked away. The following day, Zi Hao tried to sell his shoes to a man and a woman named Zhu Enze and Yi Swan. Unfortunately, they tricked Zi Hao and even physically hurt him. At that time, Zhu Enze recorded the incident and threatened to post the video online if Zi Hao asked for money for his limited edition shoes. So, Zi Hao reluctantly gave up his shoes to prevent the video of the attack from being shared on the internet. In the evening, Zi Hao went to a convenience store to calm down, and Ugly Wen Sui, feeling sorry for him, went to the storeroom to get a drink for Zi Hao. However, Zi Hao took advantage of the situation and stole money from the cash register before running away. Seeing that, Ugly Wen Sui tried to chase after him to get back the stolen money, but he couldn't catch up. When Ugly Wen Sui returned to the store without the sales money, Mr. Ma, the store owner, was upset. He decided to fire Ugly Wen Sui, thinking he had colluded with Zi Hao to steal money from the store. When Zi Hao got to school, he immediately gave the money he had stolen from the convenience store the previous night to Zan Chang. Shortly after, he received a call from Handsome Wen Sui, who wanted to meet and asked if the money given to Zan Chang was the stolen money from the mini-market. Handsome Wen Sui lied and told Zi Hao that Ugly Wen Sui, who worked at the mini-market, was his friend and had lost his job because of Zi Hao's actions the previous night. Upon hearing this, Zi Hao seemed to feel guilty and finally opened up about the fraud and bullying he had endured. Then Handsome Wen Sui decided to help Zi Hao recover his shoes and delete all the bullying videos. He went to an internet cafe to gather information about Zhu Enze and Yi Swan. After getting the fraudster's phone number, Handsome Wen Sui arranged a meeting with them, telling he wants to buy the limited edition shoes they were selling. When they met, without hesitation, Handsome Wen Sui used his martial arts skills to defeat Zhu Enze. After beating him, he took Zhu Enze's phone to delete the bullying video of Zi Hao. However, Yi Swan secretly attacked him until he fainted, even though the video hadn't been deleted yet. As the other body fainted, Ugly Wen Sui woke up and hurried to rescue the unconscious Handsome Wen Sui. There, Zhu Enze and Yi Swan had taken him to an apartment and were holding him hostage. A little later, Handsome Wen Sui woke up in the apartment and tried to escape using the emergency stairs. Meanwhile, Ugly Wen Sui was found lying in the middle of the road after fainting, and CK, who was with Zi Hao, trying to wake him. When Ugly Wen Sui regained consciousness, Handsome Wen Sui became unconscious again, and the thugs arrested him once more. At the same time, Ugly Wen Sui, who had woken up, asked for CK's and others' help because he knew that Handsome Wen Sui was being held captive by some thugs in an apartment. Upon hearing this, CK and his friends rushed to the apartment as Ugly Wen Sui had directed them. Shortly after CK left with his group, Ugly Wen Sui thought he needed to wake up in Handsome Wen Sui's body. So he decided to hit his head against a pole on the side of the road to make himself faint. Meanwhile, Handsome Wen Sui, who had regained consciousness, tried to escape from the thugs who were about to take him back to the detention room. At that time, he ran to the parking lot, pursued by Zhu Enze and another thug named Sun Tong. Fortunately, CK and his friends arrived to help Handsome Wen Sui deal with the thugs. After defeating Zhu Enze, Handsome Wen Sui took the thug's phone and deleted all the videos of Zi Hao's bullying. At that moment, Yi Swan suddenly arrived with another group of thugs to attack Handsome Wen Sui and the others. However, the thugs eventually fled in fear when the police arrived. On the roadside, Zi Hao found Ugly Wen Sui lying unconscious. Unable to wake his friend up, he called for an ambulance to take Ugly Wen Sui to the hospital where Handsome Wen Sui was already receiving treatment after his fight with the thugs. Secretly, Handsome Wen Sui brought Ugly Wen Sui's body back home, but Tao Kiao saw this and went to check on Ugly Wen Sui's condition in his room. Quickly, Wen Sui switched back to his bigger body to meet Tao Kao, who reassured him and offered to listen to his worries. Another day, Zan Chang went to the teacher's room to meet his homeroom teacher because someone had anonymously reported his bullying behavior. Feeling angry, Zan Chang confronted Zihao, suspecting him as the anonymous reporter. Just before he could harm Zihao, Tao Kao intervened, allowing Zihao to escape. In the evening, Ugly Wen Sui returned to see Ma at the main market, hoping to get his part-time job back. Seeing the determination in front of him, Ma decided to rehire Ugly Wen Sui. Meanwhile, outside the mini-market, Zan Chong, still upset with Zihao, planned to confront him. Soon after, Ugly Wen Sui came to help Zihao, and Zan Chang proposed that they fight, with the winner being spared. Reluctantly, Zihao struck Ugly Wen Sui to free himself from Zan Chong. After this incident, Zihao met Ugly Wen Sui again in front of the mini-market to apologize and discuss the problems caused by Zan Chong, who had been reported to the school for bullying. According to Zihao, the only student who dared to stand up to Zan Chong was Tao Kao. So, the next day, when handsome Wen Sui learned that Zan Chang was going to confront Tao Kao, he rushed to her rescue. Just before Zan Chang could harm Tao Kao, handsome Wen Sui intervened, asking her to hide from the bad student who was pursuing her. Not too long after, a video of handsome Wen Sui saving Tao Kao circulated around school, which irritated Zan Chang, who was in the cafeteria with his friends. Soon after, Zan Chong approached handsome Wen Sui, who had just gotten his food, and accidentally spilled it while warning him not to cause trouble. Later that night, while Ugly Wen Sui was working at the convenience store, Zihao approached handsome Wen Sui, curious about why he had helped Tao Kao. Heina, who was also at the mini-market and had heard about the incident, asked Zihao to meet up and find out the truth about what had happened between handsome Wen Sui and Tao Kao. With an explanation from Zihao, the following day, Heina, feeling annoyed, decided to bother Tao Kao by scribbling on her desk and locker. Meanwhile, handsome Wen Sui found himself surrounded by Zan Chong and his friends because Zan Chang still couldn't accept how he had protected Tao Kao. In this situation, handsome Wen Sui was forced to fight Zan Chong, who turned out to be a better fighter. Fortunately, just before handsome Wen Sui was about to lose the fight, CK intervened and forced Zan Chong and his group to leave. On the other hand, Heina, who was still trying to bother Tao Kao, decided to sabotage the online shop owned by Tao Kao and her older sister, Mo Hunt. This caused customers to request refunds, resulting in a lot of losses for Tao Kao. When Tao Kao found out that Heina was behind this, she confronted her at the convenience store. Heina eventually confessed that she was envious of the attention that handsome Wen Sui gave Tao Kao. Meanwhile, Ugly Wen Sui overheard their argument and tried to intervene to stop their fight. A few days later, Tao Kao met with Heina to apologize and clarify that she wasn't the one who reported Zan Chong to the school. She also pleaded with Heina not to harm her online shop, which was her older sister's main source of income. Heina, however, acted innocent and further demeaned Tao Kao by throwing money as compensation for the shop's losses. She even told a classmate to pick up the scattered money and dumped trash on Tao Kao's head. During this incident, handsome Wen Sui recorded all of Heina's mistreatment and asked her to stop bothering Tao Kao before finally urging Tao Kao to leave. On their way home, they ran into Mang Qi, and unexpectedly, Zan Chang appeared and asked handsome Wen Sui to talk. There, Zan Chang requested that handsome Wen Sui delete the video of Heina's bullying, but he refused, leading to a confrontation between the two. When Zan Chang managed to snatch handsome Wen Sui's cell phone, Mang Qi, who was with Tao Kao, intervened and confessed that she was the one who reported him to the school. Zan Chang couldn't believe that the girl he had a crush on had reported him. He tried to chase Mang Qi home to apologize, but she was still upset and expressed her disapproval of Zan Chang's behavior, especially how he acted like a tough guy at school. Meanwhile, handsome Wen Sui, who had just arrived in the room, had passed out on top of Ugly Wen Sui. When Ugly Wen Sui woke up, he noticed a mark on the back of his handsome body's neck, which he thought might be a birthmark. On another note, a man named Zhang Zhe was searching for the whereabouts of Handsome Wen Sui, who had reportedly been missing for 3 months. Back at the thugs' headquarters, where Zan Chang was, Sun Tong, the leader of the thugs, was annoyed at Zan Chang for failing to defeat Handsome Wen Sui. Despite being treated rudely by Sun Tong, Zan Chang tried to control his anger, recalling Mang Qi's advice to him. In another part of the room, He Na was playing games while overhearing Sun Tong's anger towards Zan Chang. She was the one who had apparently told Sun Tong to get rid of Handsome Wen Sui through Zan Chang. Due to Sun Tong's failure, He Na was getting annoyed with the local thug leader. At the same time, Tao Kiao and Mang Qi were figuring out how to sell the items from Tao Kiao's online shop that customers had returned. When Mang Qi noticed a package that belonged to Handsome Wen Sui entrusted to Tao Kiao, she had an idea. Then she suggested that he become the male model for Tao Kiao's online shop clothing, with Mohan showcasing the female clothing. Tao Kiao liked the idea and hurried to meet Handsome Wen Sui to offer him the package and ask him to be a model for her shop. Initially hesitant, he eventually agreed after some convincing from Tao Kiao. Shortly after she left, Handsome Wen Sui opened a package he had ordered, which contained an inhaler that could help the user fall asleep quickly, enabling him to switch bodies. Unfortunately, he used this inhaler to cheat during an exam. He pretended to fall asleep during the test so he could wake up in the body of Ugly Wen Sui at home, where he could review his notes and answer the exam questions. After finding the answers, Ugly Wen Sui used his inhaler to fall asleep and wake up again in the body of Handsome Wen Sui in class. One of Handsome Wen Sui's classmates, Gu Chiquan, confronted him in the restroom about this incident. Handsome Wen Sui explained that he was just giving his brain a break during the exam. After school, Handsome Wen Sui had a photo session with Tao Kiao's older sister. Since he had never modeled before, he felt awkward in front of the camera. But surprisingly, his homeroom teacher noticed his good looks and suggested that he could become a model at a famous clothing company owned by Wu Anna. At first, Wen Sui turned down the offer because he didn't think he had the talent, but his teacher convinced him to give it a try. Later, Handsome Wen Sui went to Anna's office for an interview. When she asked him to pose, he still looked a bit uncomfortable, but Anna decided to hire him because she believed his good looks would attract customers. After the interview, Anna found a sketchbook with clothing designs that Wen Sui had brought, but when he asked about it, she pretended not to have seen it. Eventually, Handsome Wen Sui had a photo shoot with a professional model named Chan Hubin. Unfortunately, he struggled to pose correctly, and the photographer got frustrated. Anna defended Wen Sui, who was still new to modeling. Back at home, Wen Sui told Tao Kiao's sister about his difficulties, and she helped him practice the poses that professional models usually do. On a different day, Chi Kwon was in Anna's store. At that time, he saw a piece of clothing that looked just like a design he had in his sketchbook, which had been brought by Handsome Wen Sui. Soon after, Chi Kwon invited Handsome Wen Sui to his house to ask him about it. This made Handsome Wen Sui really nervous, and he didn't want to talk about the clothes or the sketchbook he had lost. After that, Handsome Wen Sui went to see Anna to make sure the dress design matched the one in his lost sketchbook. Anna said it was her design from a long time ago, but Handsome Wen Sui didn't believe her. So she gave him some money to keep him quiet, pretending it was a bonus for his work, to stop him from being suspicious. After leaving Anna's place, Handsome Wen Sui bumped into Chi Kwon, who had been following him. Chi Kwon thought Handsome Wen Sui had sold his design. When Handsome Wen Sui tried to explain everything, he suddenly got a headache. In the evening, Wen Sui, who had switched bodies with someone else, went with his grandma to Anna's store to buy clothes. However, the store employees didn't treat his grandma well because they thought she didn't have money. Meanwhile, Chi Kwon was upset and didn't want to answer the phone when Wen Sui called. However, he changed his mind when he got a message from Wen Sui asking him to come to Anna's boutique. At the same time, Wen Sui, who had now returned to his good-looking body, went to confront Anna. He was upset to see his grandma being treated unfairly. He pressured Anna to admit that she had stolen other people's designs and even made her check her desk, where they found a drawing book that belonged to Chi Kwon. Anna couldn't say anything because her lies had been exposed. Chi Kwon, who had also come to Anna's office, discovered that she had stolen his design. There, Wen Sui forced Anna to apologize to Chi Kwon and his grandma, who had been kicked out of the shop. Anna had no choice but to do as Wen Sui asked. After this incident, Chi Kwon and Wen Sui became closer friends. Chi Kwon even invited Wen Sui to his fancy house for dinner to show his gratitude. Unfortunately, Chi Kwon's dad, Mr. Gu, didn't seem very welcoming, which made Chi Kwon feel sad. At that time, Wen Sui noticed this and invited Chi Kwon to have noodles together after dinner. They stood in front of a convenience store, and Wen Sui showed Chi Kwon how to eat instant noodles, something that rich people like Chi Kwon weren't used to. Despite that, he was happy and tried to eat noodles the way Wen Sui did. The following night, Zihao takes CK to an old warehouse to meet with some tough guys. After dropping off CK, Zihao hurries to a nearby convenience store and asks ugly Wen Sui where handsome Wen Sui is. He's worried because he believes that CK might be in danger due to the person he's meeting, who happens to be Zan Cheng's boss. Soon after, ugly Wen Sui rushes home to switch bodies, and this almost gets noticed by Chi Kwon, who enters Wen Sui's room when he sees the door open. Handsome Wen Sui quickly takes Chi Kwon out of the room and tries to distract his friend so he can rush to the warehouse, where CK is about to face a group of thugs. Fortunately, handsome Wen Sui arrives just in time to help CK fend off the thugs. The next day, in class, the homeroom teacher shares the results of the previous exam, and handsome Wen Sui is surprised to see that he got the highest score in the class, even though Chi Kwon usually had the highest score. This makes Chi Kwon even more suspicious of handsome Wen Sui, especially since he noticed something strange when handsome Wen Sui woke up after ugly Wen Sui fell asleep. So in the evening, Chi Kwon goes to the convenience store to meet ugly Wen Sui while trying to call handsome Wen Sui's cell phone. When ugly Wen Sui realized that Chi Kwon was trying to contact him, and he didn't want his secret to be revealed, he quickly diverted Chi Kwon's attention by inviting him to eat instant noodles together. Chi Kwon noticed that ugly Wen Sui had a similar strange way of eating noodles as handsome Wen Sui. Meanwhile, Anna was still upset with Chi Kwon, and was trying to claim the copyright for a design that was actually created by him. She did this by meeting with her older sister, Yusin, who happens to be Chi Kwon's stepmother. After the complaint, Yusin told her husband, Mr. Gu, about their son's actions, which led to Chi Kwon getting scolded by his dad, even though he was innocent. When handsome Wen Sui found out that Anna used dishonest methods to get the copyright, he confronted her. He told her that he had quit being a model for her company because he didn't want to work with people who ran a dishonest business. In the evening, handsome Wen Sui had a conversation with Chi Kwon, who finally revealed that he was the result of an affair between Gu and Chi Kwon's mother, who had passed away when Chi Kwon was in the 2nd grade of elementary school. Not long after Chi Kwon's mother's death, Mr. Gu married Yusin, Anna's older sister, who also happened to be the principal at the high school both Wen Sui and Chi Kwon attended. Sadly, after Mr. Gu got married, he became abusive and told Chi Kwon never to reveal his name in public because he didn't want his reputation to be harmed by having a child out of wedlock. Because of this, Chi Kwon was always isolated from his family, and he had no friends. Handsome Wen Sui, who heard all of Chi Kwon's stories, decided to contact CK and introduce him to Chi Kwon. The three of them talked and became closer friends after their meeting. Meanwhile, Tao Clao was still worried about the 3 months' worth of unpaid room rent and was looking for ways to make her sales more appealing to attract more buyers. When she checked the comments on her online shop, many female customers were asking about the clothes worn by handsome Wen Sui, which gave her the idea of selling men's clothing in her shop. On another day, while handsome Wen Sui was hanging clothes to dry, he overheard a conversation between Tao Clao and the landlord, who was planning to tell her to go because of the 3 months' unpaid rent. He felt sorry for Tao Clao's situation. A little later, Tao Clao, who was feeling down, talked to handsome Wen Sui about her attempt to become a reseller at Anna's company, but she got rejected because Anna's shop considered Tao Clao's online shop too small. Hearing this story, handsome Wen Sui quickly talked to Chi Kwang and told him about Tao Kyo's problem. He also asked Chi Kwang to help by designing men's clothing, as Chi Kwang could use this opportunity to get back at Anna, whom had unfairly taken the copyright of his design. Surprisingly, Tao Kyo overheard their plans, and after Chi Kwang agreed to help, the three of them started discussing the necessary details. Soon after, Tao Kyo also met with Hei Na to ask for help in promoting her new online shop products. At first, Hei Na refused because Tao Kyo could only pay her a small fee, but when she heard that handsome Wen Sui would be modeling the products, she accepted Tao Kyo's offer without hesitation, even offering to help for free. The next day, Hei Na did a live stream with handsome Wen Sui to promote Tao Kyo's new products, and during the stream, she tried to get close to him. After the online promotion, Hei Na insisted that handsome Wen Sui drag her home. A few days later, Anna, who was unhappy with the new products in Tao Kyo's online shop, reported it to Yusin. As a result, Tao Kyo and the others were called to the principal's office, knowing that Yusin was upset about the men's clothing in her shop. After school, Chi Kwang, who had witnessed Tao Kyo's sacrifice to protect him, confronted Yusin at home. He threatened to reveal his true identity to the public if she punished his friends. Yusin couldn't do anything because exposing Chi Kwang's identity could jeopardize her position in the family. On that evening, Chi Kwang, who was still curious about Wen Sui, went to see Wen Sui's grandmother to look at Wen Sui's childhood photos. When he saw the photo album, he was shocked to discover that the grandson was actually ugly Wen Sui. Because of this surprise, Chi Kwang hurried to Wen Sui's house to confirm the real identity behind the Nam Wen Sui. At the same time, ugly Wen Sui was in the process of switching bodies to become handsome Wen Sui, and this was witnessed by Chi Kwang when he entered the room. Handsome Wen Sui had to admit that he had two different bodies, but Chi Kwang didn't believe it. He even accused handsome Wen Sui of trying to trick him, causing their friendship to become strained. The next day, when Chi Kwang heard that handsome Wen Sui was absent from school, he immediately went to Wen Sui's house to verify what handsome Wen Sui had previously told him. There he also saw handsome Wen Sui lying in bed, so he met ugly Wen Sui, who was with his grandmother. At that time, ugly Wen Sui was surprised by Chi Kwang's visit and his quest for the truth. As a result, ugly Wen Sui showed how he could switch bodies to become handsome Wen Sui, eventually convincing Chi Kwang that was true. On another school day, Hei Na was unexpectedly approached by Sun Tong, who had been interested in her for a while. He confronted her because he felt like she was taking advantage of him, despite his efforts to do things for her. Fortunately, CK quickly came to her aid by getting the troublemaker out of school. When evening arrived, Hei Na purposely went to the warehouse near the convenience store to do a live stream, even though her father had forbidden her from becoming an influencer or live streamer. On the other hand, ugly Wen Sui, who was on the lookout, warned her, but she insisted on pursuing her hobby, knowing that her father was away. Unexpectedly, Ma, her father, showed up at the convenience store, and ugly Wen Sui tried to stop his boss from entering the storage room. However, Ma insisted and discovered that Hei Na was doing something he had expressly forbidden. He'd also tried to explain that he was worried about her safety, especially since a mysterious person had been following their neighbor, who often did live streams. Annoyed with his daughter, Ma decided to ground her for a while to prevent her from live streaming. A few days later, when Tao Kyo was doing a photo shoot with handsome Wen Sui and Chi Kwang for her online shop's new products, she received a call from Hei Na asking for help to bring clothes so she could disguise herself and escape from her father. Without hesitation, Tao Kyo rushed to assist Hei Na. Meanwhile, handsome Wen Sui, who was now alone with Chi Kwang, finally talked about their misunderstanding and made amends. When evening came, Hei Na, who had run away from her father, planned to resume live streaming in the warehouse near the convenience store. However, ugly Wen Sui stopped her. While he was busy putting some things into the warehouse, she secretly took his room key so she could live stream. Soon after, she entered Wen Sui's room and started broadcasting, not realizing that someone suspicious was watching her. The following day at school, Hei Na accidentally dropped her locker key, which was then found by a mysterious person. Since she lost her key, Hei-na used a spare key to open her locker, only to discover that the clothes she had stored inside were gone. Tao Kao, who was concerned, suggested that Hei-na take a break from live streaming because she suspected that Hei-na's fans might be the ones responsible for the theft. Meanwhile, Chi Kwong and Handsome Wen-sui heard about Hei-na's missing clothes and suspected Sun Tong as the possible thief, especially since the thug leader had been interested in Hei-na for a long time. With this suspicion, they secretly went to Sun Tong's hideout to search for evidence of Hei-na's stolen items. Unfortunately, one of Sun Tong's men noticed their presence, so they had to make a quick escape from the area. Back to Tao Kao, who was with Hei-na in the school restroom, she got a big shock when Hei-na screamed because a strange man tried to grab her. Luckily, Tao Kao acted quickly and hit the would-be kidnapper, causing him to run away. The kidnapper went back to his hideout to check the wound on his neck from Tao Kao's bag. On the other hand, Tao Kao returned to her clothing design room to continue working on her designs, but a school security guard asked her to leave and go home. Soon after, she reported the incident of Hei-na's almost kidnapping in the school restroom and was also approached by Chi Kwong, who had come to pick her up because it was getting dark. On another day, Hei-na, Tao Kao, Chi Kwong, and Handsome Wen-sui met to plan how to catch Hei-na's fan who had tried to kidnap her by setting a trap for the mysterious man. There, Tao Kao shared details about the perpetrator, mentioning the wound on his neck from their previous encounter in the restroom. Right before they were about to carry out their plan, Tao Kao saw a suspicious man who she believed was the kidnapper from Hei-na's previous incident. She secretly followed him to the parking lot, but unfortunately, he noticed her actions and drugged and kidnapped her. On the other hand, Hei-na and the others received a message from Tao Kao saying she had to go home urgently, even though it was actually the kidnapper using Tao Kao's phone. In the evening, the bad guy was seen buying drinks at the store. Ugly Wen-sui, who recognized Hei-na's features, decided to follow the mysterious man who seemed to be trying to kidnap Hei-na. At that time, Ugly Wen-sui tried to stop the kidnapper, but got knocked out. When he woke up, he was in the body of Handsome Wen-sui. He rushed to where his own body was, and CK and Chi Kwong had also arrived after being contacted by Handsome Wen-sui. At that moment, Handsome Wen-sui described the kidnapper as their school security guard. Chi Kwong immediately asked his assistant to find information about the security guard, and once they had all the necessary details, Handsome Wen-sui asked CK to go to the place where Hei-na was held captive. Chi Kwong was to report to the police and take care of Ugly Wen-sui's body. Meanwhile, in an empty building, Hei-na and Tao Kao, who were tied up, tried to escape. Unfortunately, when they were about to run away, Tao Kao's legs cramped, so Hei-na had to leave her behind. Then, the bad person caught Hei-na again and tied up Tao Kao again. Shortly after, the bad person searched for Hei-na, who was hiding. When he found her, he demanded that she promise to marry him while showing a video of him saying that during her live stream. Hearing that, Hei-na refused, and this made the bad person angry, and he tried to harm her. Luckily, Tao Kao came to rescue Hei-na, who ran away and met Handsome Wen-sui. He told her that Tao Kao was in danger, and he immediately looked for Tao Kao, who was hiding. Not long after, the bad person came and tried to set the building on fire, but Handsome Wen-sui tried to stop him, and a fight broke out. Just before the bad person could hurt Handsome Wen-sui with a knife, CK came to help, even though his hand was injured while trying to stop the bad person. They managed to overpower the bad person, and the police arrived to arrest him. A few days later, Tao Kao had a lot of orders for her online shop, so she had a simple party to celebrate its success. Handsome Wen-sui, who was going to join the party, went to the restroom to wash his face. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his head and fainted. At the same time, Zhongzhe was instructing his men to search for Handsome Wen-sui, whose real name is Chris Lee, a Chinese-American citizen. The next day, Chi Kwong went into Wen-sui's room to invite him to a party and was surprised to find Wen-sui unconscious. Fortunately, when Sui woke up and mentioned that he had heard someone call him Chris before fainting. The next night, the same thing happened to Wen Sui, and he realized he was Chris. Tao Kiao was shocked by Wen Sui's behavior because he even got into a fight with Sun Tong's men, who accidentally bumped into him. In that moment, Sun Tong got angry and told Zan Cheng to fight Wen Sui, but Zan Cheng refused because he had promised not to fight anymore. Sun Tong threatened Zan Cheng, which made him sad, so he decided to go to a cafe. Unexpectedly, Mang Qi, Tao Kiao, and Zi Hao also went to the cafe. When they left, Mang Qi wanted to leave immediately, even though she saw Zan Cheng passed out from drinking. However, Zi Hao felt sorry for him and contacted handsome Wen Sui to help take Zan Cheng home. On the way home, Sun Tong's men saw this and reported it. The next day, Zan Cheng met Sun Tong again, who ordered him to fight handsome Wen Sui. Zi Hao saw this and told handsome Wen Sui about it. Then, Tao Kiao also asked handsome Wen Sui to go home quickly to avoid an attack from Zan Cheng. After school, Zi Hao took Qi Kuang to Sun Tong's headquarters to deal with the issue involving handsome Wen Sui. During this time, Sun Tong's men arrested Qi Kuang, but Zi Hao secretly recorded the incident and tried to contact Qi Kuang's secretary. However, he dialed the wrong number and ended up calling handsome Wen Sui instead. He informed him that Qi Kuang was in trouble. Meanwhile, Sun Tong continued to threaten Zan Cheng to do his orders. Finally, handsome Wen Sui arrived to rescue Qi Kuang, who was being attacked by Sun Tong's men. Unfortunately, handsome Wen Sui got beaten up by the thugs and lost consciousness. But then handsome Wen Sui transformed into Chris, with a different personality, and managed to defeat all of Sun Tong's men, even though he eventually passed out. Shortly after, CK appeared and accused Zan Cheng of causing harm to his friends. They argued, and it was revealed that CK and Zan Cheng had been childhood friends. CK had even sacrificed himself to protect Zan Cheng from bullies in the past. Unfortunately, Zan Cheng decided to join Sun Tong's group because he felt guilty after CK got injured and ended up with a scar on his back while trying to help Zan Cheng. Meanwhile, Sun Tong was really mad and decided to hit CK. Unexpectedly, Zan Cheng stepped in to protect his friend, even though it meant taking a punch from Sun Tong. Luckily, the police arrived near Sun Tong's hideout, so the thugs ran away. CK and the others rushed Zan Cheng to the hospital. While at the hospital, CK talked to handsome Wen Sui about his issues with Zan Cheng. Unbeknownst to them, Zan Cheng overheard CK saying he never regretted helping him. CK saw Zan Cheng leaving and followed him, and they became friends again after that incident. On another day, the homeroom teacher announced that there would be summer camping activities soon and appointed handsome Wen Sui as the class representative for the event's art performance. During break time, he confessed to Tao Kiao and Qi Kuang that he wasn't good at performing in front of people. But Tao Kiao came up with the idea for him to create a boy band so they could perform together, and Qi Kuang even offered to design their costumes as a playful tease. After school, Qi Kuang and handsome Wen Sui discussed the upcoming summer camping trip because neither of them had been to it before. Even though Qi Kuang wasn't a new student like handsome Wen Sui, he had always been sent abroad during summer vacations. But now, he wanted to participate in the school event. On the day of departure, handsome Wen Sui waited for Qi Kuang, but Qi Kuang didn't show up. Surprisingly, the night before the trip, Gu gave Qi Kuang a flight ticket to Japan while he was getting ready for camping. This made handsome Wen Sui think that Qi Kuang had decided not to go on the camping trip. However, just before handsome Wen Sui boarded the bus that was about to leave, Qi Kuang arrived to join the school event. When they arrived at the camping location, the male students were assigned to Instructor Viper, while the female students were with Instructor Du. Before they could start the camping activities, all students were required to leave their cell phones and other communication devices behind and wear military uniforms provided by the organizers. Once everyone was ready, the military training activities began, which brought handsome Wen Sui and Tao Kiao closer together. In the evening, the students were having a great time watching the performances by their classmates. When it was handsome Wen Sui and his boy band's turn to perform, he seemed a bit uncertain on stage. However, Hubin suddenly joined them on stage, making the event even more enjoyable. After the art performance ended, Tao Qiao was upset with Hubin for interrupting the handsome boy band's performance, but Hubin told her to thank him because he believed he added excitement to the stage. Hubin is Tao Qiao's classmate and is training to debut with his boy band. He took time off from school for this reason and did homeschooling. Later, when all the students returned to their rooms, Mang Qi was surprised when Zan Chang wanted to chat with her in front of the girls' dormitory. Unfortunately, Instructor Viper came and warned them not to meet after the curfew. At that time, Zan Chang had to go back to his room, where one of his roommates found a post on the internet with a picture of their friend's feet in the room. They became suspicious that someone might have placed a hidden camera in a female student's room. On another day, handsome Wen Sui heard that Tao Qiao was getting treatment from Instructor Viper for a leg injury. In the treatment room, handsome Wen Sui noticed Instructor Viper taking advantage of the situation by holding Tao Qiao's leg. Fortunately, handsome Wen Sui intervened and took her out of the treatment room. During a nighttime trip in the forest, it seemed like someone intentionally misdirected an arrow, causing Tao Qiao and Mang Qi to become lost. They were both scared and tried to find their way back. Unfortunately, Tao Qiao sprained her leg, so Mang Qi decided to go for help on her own. Meanwhile, Qi Kuang and the others noticed that Tao Qiao and Mang Qi hadn't returned, so they quickly informed Instructor Viper. Upon hearing the report, Instructor Viper immediately ordered all the students to return to the base camp. He, along with handsome Wen Sui and Zan Chang, separately started searching for the two missing girls. Eventually, Instructor Viper found Mang Qi and asked her to show him where Tao Qiao was. Meanwhile, Wen Sui and Zan Chang began to suspect Instructor Viper of intentionally leading their friends astray because he had previously been seen trying to get close to Tao Qiao. Because of these suspicions, they tried to locate Instructor Viper, who was pressuring the frightened Mang Qi to help search for Tao Qiao. Then, Zan Chang quickly came to Mang Qi's rescue because he was concerned that Instructor Viper might do something harmful to her, and Instructor Viper had even been reported to the police. When the police arrived to arrest Viper, one of the officers told Qi Kuang that they had been searching for a homeless criminal for a long time. After Qi Kuang and the others saw the criminal's face in a brochure given by the police, and he looked like Du, Qi Kuang immediately contacted handsome Wen Sui on the walkie-talkie to look for Tao Qiao, who might be in danger because she was being targeted by Du. At the same time, Du had taken Tao Qiao to an empty warehouse. Fortunately, before Du could harm her, handsome Wen Sui came to her rescue. Unfortunately, she got beaten up by Du until he passed out. But because of this, handsome Wen Sui woke up as Chris and gave Du a good beating. Following these events, the students were finally sent back home. On the bus, Zan Chang finally gave the doll he had intended for Mang Qi. She smiled after receiving the gift. A few days later, Tao Qiao continued to avoid handsome Wen Sui until one evening when she went to the minimarket to confess to ugly Wen Sui that she actually liked handsome Wen Sui. At school, while eating in the cafeteria with Mang Qi, Tao Qiao left the table after handsome Wen Sui and Qi Kuang joined them. Mang Qi noticed this and asked Tao Qiao who she liked. Finally, Tao Qiao confessed that she had feelings for handsome Wen Sui, and Mang Qi suggested that she should tell him about her feelings. After receiving this advice, Tao Qiao met handsome Wen Sui in front of his room and invited him to watch a movie at the cinema. Although he was surprised, handsome Wen Sui accepted her invitation. Before their date, Tao Qiao went to the salon with Mang Qi. Unbeknownst to them, Hei Na was also at the salon and overheard that Tao Qiao was going on a date with handsome Wen Sui. When Tao Qiao was at the cinema, handsome Wen Sui, on his way to meet her, suddenly transformed into Chris Du to a mark on the back of his neck glowing. At the same time, Hei Na approached him and invited him to a nightclub in an attempt to sabotage his date with Tao Qiao. With his Chris personality, handsome Wen Sui enjoyed his time with Hei Na at the bar until he felt a headache. He quickly switched back to his Wen Sui personality, rushed away, and met Tao Qiao, who had been waiting for him for 3 hours. He hugged her, apologized, and then invited her to watch a movie together. On another day, the person in charge of overseeing Hu Bin, Mr. Bai, got upset when he found out that Hu Bin had gone out with a woman. Since he didn't want Hu Bin's image as a newly debuted idol to be damaged, Mr. Bai asked Hu Bin to return to school after taking some time off. The next day, Mr. Bai met with the principal to discuss this, and as he was heading home, he happened to bump into Handsome Wen Sui. He was impressed by Handsome Wen Sui's good looks and gave him his business card, asking him to get in touch. Meanwhile, Hu Bin, who had just come back to school, was surrounded by female students who were his fans. Even in class, many students tried to get close to him, including Heina. However, Hu Bin's happiness faded when Zihao told him that Handsome Wen Sui had met Mr. Bai. Upon hearing this, Hu Bin felt annoyed and playfully called Wen Sui handsome. After school, when Handsome Wen Sui was doing a photo shoot as a model for Tao Kio's online shop, she advised him not to miss the opportunity presented by Mr. Bai, who was interested in recruiting him. In the evening, Ugly Wen Sui, who was working at a mini-market, received news from his aunt that his grandmother's street stall had been removed because it was illegally built. Upon hearing this news, Ugly Wen Sui informed Qi Kwang and went to the usual spot where his grandmother used to sell her goods. At that time, Ugly Wen Sui didn't have the courage to face his grandmother because he felt like he'd become a burden to her. Soon after, he reached out to his grandmother to check on her, but she lied and said she was fine, which made him even sadder. When Ugly Wen Sui arrived at his rented room and learned that Mr. Bai could help him get his grandmother's sales stall back, he finally decided to accept Mr. Bai's offer to become an artist at his agency. The next day, after he switched back to his handsome body, Wen Sui met with Mr. Bai to discuss the contract. Mr. Bai was willing to return Wen Sui's grandmother's stall if Handsome Wen Sui signed the contract and underwent training to become an idol at the agency. Handsome Wen Sui agreed to all the conditions and signed the agreement document. Sometime later, Handsome Wen Sui began practicing dancing. However, Hu Bin, who found out about it, felt jealous of Handsome Wen Sui joining the practice. He even accidentally spilled a drink in the practice room on purpose after the rehearsal. The following day, Mr. Bai called Handsome Wen Sui and gave him a script for a drama. There, he wanted Handsome Wen Sui to audition for the main actor role in the drama. Hearing that, Hu Bin was also upset with his boss's decision, especially because he was planning to audition for the same drama. Mr. Bai explained that he wanted to send several of his artists to the audition and asked Hu Bin to compete fairly with Handsome Wen Sui if he wanted a role in the drama. On the flip side, Handsome Wen Sui asked his friends for assistance in teaching him acting before the audition began. On the day of the audition, Hu Bin also displayed his acting skills, earning praise from the director. When it was Handsome Wen Sui's turn, he was initially nervous and remained silent. However, he suddenly got a headache and transformed into Chris. He attempted to fight one of the staff members who scolded him. Surprisingly, this action led to Handsome Wen Sui passing the audition. Due to Handsome Wen Sui's success, Hu Bin planned something against him. Then he instructed someone to follow his rival and gather information. After obtaining several photos of Handsome Wen Sui and details about Ugly Wen Sui, who was Handsome Wen Sui's roommate, Hu Bin visited the mini-market where Ugly Wen Sui worked. Not long ago, Hu Bin's manager informed him that Ugly Wen Sui had been bullied in the past before moving to another city. On another occasion, Hu Bin visited Ugly Wen Sui's hometown to meet Pang Hu, the person who had bullied Ugly Wen Sui before. There, Hu Bin asked Pang Hu to investigate Ugly Wen Sui. After receiving a substantial payment, Pang Hu agreed to take on the job. After completing his task, he reported back to Hu Bin, who then asked him to injure Handsome Wen Sui's leg so that Hu Bin would have no rival at the agency. Without hesitation, Pang Hu agreed, especially since he had a reputation as a former city bully known for his strength. One night, Ugly Wen Sui got a surprise visit from Pang Hu at the mini-market. There, Pang Hu wanted to know where Handsome Wen Sui was because he planned to challenge him to a fight the next day. Ugly Wen Sui didn't reveal the whereabouts of his other self, so Pang Hu left without paying for the items he had picked up. The following day, Pang Hu confronted Handsome Wen Swai at school, and Handsome Wen Swai bravely accepted the challenge. Unfortunately, Pang Hu's superior martial arts skills proved too much for Handsome Wen Swai, but luckily, CK and the others arrived in time to rescue their friend. Although Pang Hu was alone, he eventually decided to leave, promising to defeat them all another time. Later on, Pang Hu also meets Sun Tong's group and defeated them, making Sun Tong become one of Pang Hu's followers. Meanwhile, Hu Bin met with Pang Hu and warned him not to involve Qi Kuang, who was the son of an influential person in China, in his schemes. He urged Pang Hu to focus on harming the Handsome Wen Swai without dragging others into the trouble. Unfortunately, Pang Hu insisted on doing things his way, which included assaulting CK and Zan Chong at different times, leaving both of them hospitalized. However, this situation brought Zan Chong and Mang Qi closer together. Meanwhile, Tao Cao, who had just visited CK and Zan Chong, expressed her frustration with Handsome Wen Swai for concealing his issue with Pang Hu. She also hoped that Handsome Wen Swai wouldn't hide anything from her in the future. The scene shifts to Hu Bin, who was growing increasingly frustrated with Pang Hu's behavior. He had a meeting with the thug hiding in a hotel. There, Hu Bin instructed Pang Hu to harm Handsome Wen Swai without involving others. To make sure Pang Hu followed through, Hu Bin threatened to release photos of Pang Hu beating up CK to the media. Pang Hu, after receiving payment, reluctantly agreed to Hu Bin's request. The next day, Pang Hu approached Ugly Wen Swai at the convenience store to ask about Handsome Wen Swai's whereabouts. When Ugly Wen Swai refused to provide any information, Pang Hu took Ugly Wen Swai's cell phone in an attempt to contact Handsome Wen Swai, who had awakened with Chris's personality. During their phone call, Handsome Wen Swai accepted Pang Hu's challenge to a fight. Following the call, Pang Hu, still irritated with Ugly Wen Swai, attempted to attack him. Tao Kiao intervened to stop Pang Hu, but the situation escalated. She left the mini-market to seek help and encountered Handsome Wen Swai, who was still experiencing a headache. Pang Hu then challenged Handsome Wen Swai to a fight in a narrow alley. With Chris's consciousness, Handsome Wen Swai defeated Pang Hu, who eventually stopped fighting and was overwhelmed after hearing Tao Kiao scream. At that moment, Handsome Wen Swai, seeing her as Chris's younger sister, immediately hugged Tao Kiao and urged her to leave the area. On a different day, Hu Bin's henchmen returned with photos and videos showing that Pang Hu had failed to harm Handsome Wen Swai. This angered Hu Bin, so he decided to spread all the photos and videos on the internet. Bai then called Handsome Wen Swai to ask about the fight. Handsome Wen Swai explained that Pang Hu was a troublemaker who was trying to disrupt his life. However, due to the widespread distribution of photos and videos on various media platforms, Handsome Wen Swai was temporarily suspended from agency activities. After the call, he met with Qi Kuang and shared his regrets about being unconscious during the fight with Pang Hu, which caused him to miss out on an opportunity to act in a drama. Meanwhile, Pang Hu met with Hu Bin and pretended to have a broken hand from his fight with Handsome Wen Swai, attempting to blackmail the idol. Hu Bin reluctantly gave him some money on the condition that Pang Hu would continue to target Handsome Wen Swai. The following day, news of Handsome Wen Swai beating Pang Hu went viral on the internet, prompting Tao Kiao and others to search for ways to help him. Unfortunately, they lacked evidence to prove that Pang Hu was a troublemaker who had caused problems for many people. A short while later, while Tao Kiao was on her way home, she was intercepted by Pang Hu and his associates, who took her to a nightclub. There, Pang Hu showed her a video of him bullying Ugly Wen Swai, and Tao Kiao realized she was in danger and attempted to escape. At that time, Pang Hu tried to harm her, but fortunately, Handsome Wen Swai arrived with the police, whom Qi Kuang had contacted earlier, to rescue her. Following the nightclub incident, Tao Kiao faced disciplinary action from the school. Handsome Wen Swai was also upset with himself and his friends who had helped him. Although Tao Kiao assured him that it wasn't his fault, he, in his Ugly Wen Swai form, met with Bei to provide evidence of Pang Hu's past bullying. With this video, the allegations against Handsome Wen Swai were cleared, and when Hu Bin saw the video spreading online, he became furious and showed it to Pang Hu. After viewing it, Pang Hu was also enraged and planned to take revenge on handsome Wen Sui. Meanwhile, ugly Wen Sui returned home to bid farewell to his grandmother, claiming he would be going abroad for a few years, even though it was just an excuse. In reality, he intended to seek revenge against Pang Hu by using his handsome Wen Sui form continuously, discarding his ugly body. Once back in the city, ugly Wen Sui got in touch with Pang Hu, pretending to want to meet him to repay the favor for the treatment he received as handsome Wen Sui. However, this was just a trick to frame Pang Hu. When ugly Wen Sui met Pang Hu, he brought a kitchen knife with the intention of attacking him. But before he could carry out his plan, Tao Cao saw him and intervened, urging him to go home. As ugly Wen Sui arrived in front of his room, he was surprised to find Pang Hu waiting for him, and Pang Hu attacked him. In the battle, ugly Wen Sui accidentally pushed Pang Hu, causing him to fall from a high floor. To avoid implicating ugly Wen Sui in the incident, handsome Wen Sui quickly switched bodies and disposed of ugly Wen Sui's body by the seashore. Shortly after getting rid of ugly Wen Sui's body, Chris's soul suddenly returned to the body of handsome Wen Sui, leaving him confused about his surroundings. As he walked along the beach, Chris encountered ugly Wen Sui, who was unharmed. At that time, Wen Sui was astonished to see his handsome body coexisting with another soul. Chris then asked for an explanation of the events, so Wen Sui brought him home to clarify everything. On the flip side, Pang Hu, who survived the fall, is now receiving treatment in the hospital for a broken leg. Soon after, Hubin met with Pang Hu to express his disappointment after Pang Hu failed in his mission once again. When Wen Sui returned to the room, he immediately explained everything to Chris, who became angry and suspected that Wen Sui was taking advantage of his body. At that time, Chris wanted to leave, but Wen Sui stopped him by force, and then he called Chi Kuang to come over. Upon Chi Kuang's arrival, Wen Sui told him about the situation with Chris, who had lost his memory, sharing one body with him. Nevertheless, Wen Sui was still able to use Chris's body when Chris was unconscious. Sometime later, Wen Sui, now in Chris's body, met Tao Cao as they were heading to school. They talked about the recent odd behavior of handsome Wen Sui, and he apologized, claiming he was too stressed from excessive filming. During lunch, Zan Chong, aware of Wen Sui's feelings for Tao Cao, revealed his plan to help handsome Wen Sui express his feelings to her after school. During class, Hubin got curious about the mark on Wen Sui's neck, so he touched it, causing Wen Sui's soul to change into Chris. Chris, although confused, quickly adapted to his new surroundings to avoid suspicion. After the class ended, Chi Kuang noticed Chris's change in behavior and invited him to talk. As Chi Kuang tried to find out more about Chris's true identity, a man named Dr. Wu claimed to be Chris's father. However, Chris, not remembering him, decided to leave school, leaving Zan Chang puzzled about his intentions to bring handsome Wen Sui and Tao Cao together. There, Chi Kuang continued explaining the situation to Chris, but Chris got a headache, and Wen Sui's soul returned to his body. Handsome Wen Sui then met Tao Cao, who had been waiting for him, and gave her a gift. On another occasion, Wu observed Chris returning home from school and ordered his men to arrest Chris and ugly Wen Sui. Meanwhile, Bai discovered Hubin's wrongdoings in his attempts to bring down handsome Wen Sui, so he decided to hand over all of Hubin's resources, including a car and manager, to handsome Wen Sui. Annoyed, Hubin offered his former manager a deal to waive his debt in exchange for help in removing handsome Wen Sui from the cast of the drama. Hearing that, the manager agreed, and the next day, he purposely made the car carrying handsome Wen Sui break down on the way to the shoot. Hubin attempted to take over the role when handsome Wen Sui didn't show up, but his plan failed as handsome Wen Sui arrived just in time before the director replaced him. Meanwhile, Tao Cao came to the film shoot with the intention of giving a gift to handsome Wen Sui. Since she couldn't find him, she entrusted the gift to one of the staff members. During the filming, the director got annoyed when he saw handsome Wen Sui struggling with the scene, especially since he didn't have a change of clothes after spilling coffee on his outfit. Fortunately, Tao Kio's gift provided a change of clothes that the director liked, allowing the filming to continue smoothly. However, a staff member accidentally touched a mark on Handsome Wen Sui's neck, causing Chris's soul to return to his body. Surprisingly, this actually improved the filming process. On their way home, Hu Bin, noticing the change in Handsome Wen Sui's behavior, ordered Pang Hu to investigate the possibility of him having a split personality. At home, Wen Sui was surprised to find Chris sleeping outside due to exhaustion from filming. When he tried to enter Chris's body, he couldn't at first. However, after accidentally touching the mark on Chris's neck, his soul returned to his handsome body. Handsome Wen Sui then met Pang Hu, who provoked him by touching the mark on the back of his neck. This caused Chris's soul to regain control and defeat Pang Hu. The next day, Chris woke up from a scary dream about Wu, who wanted to harm him. He was curious about what had happened to him and wanted to leave, but Wen Sui, who also woke up, tried to convince Chris to stay. At that time, Wen Sui needed Chris's body for filming and earning money to help his grandma. However, Chris was determined to leave and even treated Tao Kao harshly. Soon after, he went to an internet cafe and remembered that he had kept his identity in a locker. Wu and his men tried to persuade Chris to come with them, but Chris had a bad feeling about it. He tried to run away until Wen Sui came and asked him to get into Chi Kwang's car. They went to the filming location, and Chris checked his passport, starting to remember he had a younger sister. When Chris was about to leave, Chi Kwang asked him to help Wen Sui with the filming. Although Chris initially refused, he decided to stay as a sign of gratitude because Wen Sui and Chi Kwang had helped him escape from Wu. During filming, Wen Sui posed as Chris's assistant to keep an eye on him. In the car, Chi Kwang, curious about Chris, took a photo of Chris's passport and asked his secretary to investigate. When Chris returned home from filming, he acted cold and distant towards Tao Kao, which confused her because she thought he was still Wen Sui. Tao Kao invited Wen Sui to have dinner, but when she wanted to invite Chris, she hesitated due to his attitude. Eventually, Chris joined them for dinner and revealed that Wen Sui liked Tao Kao. The dinner became awkward, and Wen Sui asked Chris to leave. Later in their room, Wen Sui explained to Chris that Tao Kao still thought Chris was him. He shared all the things he had done, using Chris's body to bring Chris and Tao Kao closer. Chris, now understanding the situation, asked how Wen Sui could use his body. Wen Sui asked Chris to press the mark on the back of his neck, which caused Wen Sui to become unconscious and enter Chris's body. After making a video statement as evidence for Chris, Handsome Wen Sui heard a knock on his bedroom door and was kidnapped after someone injected him with an anesthetic. Tao Kao tried to chase the kidnappers in a car. Soon after, Dr. Wu took Chris's body to his lab and examined it until Chris's body became aware of Wen Sui's soul. After hearing Wen Sui's explanation, Dr. Wu released him. At that time, he realized that Wen Sui's soul could enter Chris's body. At home, Wen Sui met Chris and showed him the video he had recorded earlier to prove that he could enter Chris's body. He also told Chris about Wu's kidnapping, which piqued Chris's curiosity about Wu. After their conversation, they made an agreement. Wen Sui could use Chris's body to meet Tao Kao and for filming, while in return, Wen Sui would provide shelter and food for Chris. Meanwhile, Hu Bin was frustrated when he saw news about a film featuring Handsome Wen Sui being released. He decided to install a hidden camera in Wen Sui's room to gather evidence of his dual personality. During their attempt to install the camera, Hu Bin and Pang Hu saw Wu and his men installing surveillance cameras at Wen Sui's house. After Wu left, Pang Hu located Wu's surveillance camera and issued a warning. Tao Kao, working as a wardrobe assistant on a film starring Handsome Wen Sui, received praise from the director for her clothing design. To celebrate, she hosted a simple party with her friends. During the party, she sought confirmation from Chris, whom she believed to be Handsome Wen Sui, about their relationship. Chris overheard and excused himself to the restroom to collect his thoughts. In their room, Wen Sui expressed his frustration to Chris for leaving Tao Kao. He encouraged Chris to improve his relationship with her. However, Chris, unable to tolerate Wen Sui's nagging, rejoined his friends and asked Tao Kiao to be his girlfriend. Hearing that, Tao Kiao happily agreed, thinking she was now officially dating Handsome when Swy without realizing that Chris was in front of her. The next day, after finishing filming, Chris went to an internet cafe to search for some address information. During this time, Zhongzhe secretly followed Chris, who suddenly experienced a headache and fainted, leading to a rushed trip to the hospital. When Sui received the news, he hurried to the hospital. However, Chris had already left, prompting Sui to contact Chris because he wanted to borrow Chris's body for a date with Tao Kiao. Hearing that, Chris agreed and waited for Sui to arrive. However, he couldn't resist and approached Tao Kiao when he noticed her waiting for Handsome Sui for a long time. Just as Chris kissed Tao Kiao on the forehead, Sui arrived at the scene and felt jealous. This incident led Sui to meet with CK and Zan Chang the next day to learn self-defense so that he could compete with Chris. A few days later, Wu paid attention to the hidden camera footage he had installed in Sui's room to gather information about Chris and Sui. Meanwhile, when Sui borrowed Chris's body, he met Tao Kiao, who was about to mock clothes for him. However, she accidentally touched a mark on the back of Handsome Sui's neck, causing Chris's soul to return. This surprised him, and he put Sui in a neck lock. When Sui woke up and intervened to stop Chris's actions, Tao Kiao became annoyed and suspicious of Sui's sudden change in attitude. Meanwhile, Hu Bin is seen trying to convince his former manager to supervise Handsome Sui in exchange for mocking the manager, his main manager, once he becomes successful with his own management. On another occasion at the shooting location, Tao Kiao approached Chris and Sui, who were in the car, and asked if she could ride home with them. However, when she went to get her things, Chris's car had already left, so she immediately contacted Chi Kwang to help find the whereabouts of Sui and Chris, who had been kidnapped by Wu's men. When Wu arrived, he questioned the two young men about how they could switch souls, but neither of them wanted to admit it. Wu became annoyed and threatened to inject a dangerous liquid into Sui's mouth. Fortunately, Sui and Chris managed to fight off Wu and his men and escape. Chris then agreed to tell Wu about it on the condition that Sui was released. Shortly after, CK and others arrived to help Chris and Sui, and they were able to escape. After the kidnapping incident, the two of them hid at CK and Zan Chang's boxing training ground. Chris and Sui finally revealed their secret to Zan Chang and CK, and Sui even demonstrated it in front of his friends to mock them believe him. Zan Chang was upset with Sui's decision to keep this secret, but he apologized and asked Zan Chang to keep it because he wasn't ready to share his secret with others. Meanwhile, Hu Bin and Pang Hu discovered footage of Wu kidnapping Sui and Chris from the dashboard camera of Bai Agency's car. This prompted Hu Bin and Pang Hu to go to Sui's room and use the surveillance camera Wu had installed there to threaten him. They told Wu that if he didn't comply with their demands, they would release the video of the kidnapping. As for Chris and Sui, they decided to stay at Chi Kwang's house for a while because they were still being targeted by Wu and his men. Sui asked for Chris's body again, as he had a date planned with Tao Kiao, and wanted to explain his ability to switch bodies to her. Meanwhile, Chris showed a photo of himself and his younger sister to Chi Kwang, and Sui and asked for their help in locating the place where the photo was taken, which appeared to be in front of a bakery and church. The next day, Chi Kwang also enlisted the help of CK and Zan Chang to find the location of Chris's photo to help him regain his memory. On the other hand, Hu Bin and Pang Hu met with Wu, and they decided to collaborate in their efforts to capture Chris and Sui, as they both shared the goal of getting rid of Chris and Sui. That evening, Sui used Chris's body once more to go on a date with Tao Kiao. Unfortunately, just when he was about to reveal his secret, Chi Kwang contacted the real Handsome Sui to share the address of the bakery in Chris's photo. So, Handsome Sui decided to postpone sharing his secret with Tao Kiao and instead invited her to the bakery. When they arrived at the bakery, Tao Kiao went inside to buy some bread. Meanwhile, Handsome Sui, who was outside, switched his soul with Chris, causing Chris to tear up as he remembered taking the photo with his younger sister. When Tao Kiao asked why he was crying, Chris didn't answer and chose to walk away. Later, Chris, who was starting to remember his past, went to an orphanage where he and his sister had been cared for. However, he couldn't find their nurse, who was now in the hospital. The following day, when Swai, using Chris's body, apologized to Tao Kiao for the failed date from the previous day, she expressed her suspicions about the secret he was hiding. Handsome Wen Sui promised to tell her the secret when he felt ready. Shortly after she left, Handsome Wen Sui pressed the mark on the back of his neck, returning control of Chris's body to him. Wen Sui, now in control again, asked Chris to change clothes and attend a press conference for the film he was starring in. Chris reluctantly agreed to help Wen Sui. During the press conference, Hu Bin showed up and secretly contacted Pang Hu to arrest Wen Sui and Chris after the event. Chris used his abilities to easily defeat Pang Hu, and then he rushed with Wen Sui to the hospital where his nanny was staying to ask about his younger sister. Sadly, Chris's nanny had Alzheimer's disease, which made her unable to remember Chris. She was confused about how he had come to China, especially since he had been adopted by an American family. On their way back home, Chris felt like someone was following their car. He purposely stopped the car and confronted Zhongzhe, who had been tailing him, demanding that Zhongzhe take him to Wu's base. When they arrived at the lab, Chris looked through data on all the people who had been used in Wu's experiments, including himself. Suddenly, he was rendered unconscious by the doctor. A little while later, Chris woke up, and Wu promptly activated the eye mark on the back of Chris's neck to learn how Chris and Wen Sui switched bodies. At the same time, an old man named Mr. Liu, who wanted to buy Chris's body, contacted Wu and expressed his desire to examine Chris's condition. As a result, Wu drugged Chris again, who was currently hosting Wen Sui's soul. A while later, at Qi Kuang's house, the secretary brought some important information to Qi Kuang. Chris, whose real name is Ming Hao, received the name Chris from his adoptive parents after they adopted him. Chris also has a younger sister named Yuna. After being adopted, their parents, who were facing financial difficulties, made a decision to sell Chris and Yuna to Wu, who intended to use them as subjects for experiments. Learning this, Qi Kuang and Wen Sui came up with a plan to find Yuna to ensure Chris's safety and prevent him from being further involved with Wu, which could put him in danger. The following day, Wen Sui and his friends conducted a covert investigation of Wu's headquarters. When Wu and his associates left the premises, Wen Sui and his group seized the opportunity to enter the laboratory. Meanwhile, Wu brought Chris to meet Mr. Liu, who was pleased to see Chris's healthy and attractive physical condition. Then Mr. Liu instructed Dr. Wu to take Chris to a room. As for Qi Kuang and his team, they managed to locate a hidden room within Dr. Wu's facility. However, Dr. Wu's men discovered their presence, leading to a confrontation where CK and Zan Chang tried to fend off some of the thugs. In the meantime, Qi Kuang accessed data on Dr. Wu's laptop, revealing Wu's unethical experiments involving the exchange of souls between parents and teenagers. Dr. Wu had purchased Chris's body with the intention of switching souls with a young man's body to extend his own life. With the critical information obtained, Qi Kuang urged the others to make a quick escape from the dangerous situation. On the flip side, Dr. Wu instructed his men to quickly eliminate Wen Sui to prevent the overweight man from swapping bodies with Chris. To everyone's surprise, Wen Sui, who was in Chris's body, overheard their conversation in secret. He made the daring decision to return to his original body, which resulted in Chris waking up in his own body and attempting to flee from the location. Upon arriving at CK and Zan Chang's boxing training ground, Chris, who had learned about Yuna's whereabouts, initially planned to head to Dr. Wu's laboratory. However, Wen Sui stopped him out of concern that Chris might get caught again and his body would be exchanged with Mr. Liu's. Therefore, Wen Sui suggested that Chris hide at his grandmother's house until the situation became safer. When they reached Wen Sui's hometown, Pang Hu's men spotted them and promptly reported the sighting to Pang Hu. Meanwhile, Chris received a call from Dr. Wu, who claimed that the doctor wanted to meet Chris to discuss Yuna. Without hesitation, Chris immediately boarded a bus to the city. On the way, he noticed Pang Hu's group heading towards Wen Sui's hometown. A little later, Wen Sui found himself surrounded by Pang Hu and his men. Unfortunately, despite Wen Sui managing to strike Pang Hu, he ended up unconscious after Hu Bin unexpectedly struck him with a stone. At the same time, Chris, deeply concerned about Wen Sui's safety, decided to go to the nearest bus stop and called Chi Kwang to come pick him up. After riding in the car with Chi Kwang and the others, Chris quickly switched his soul with Wen Sui so they could locate him. Wen Sui was currently being held captive by Pang Hu and others in a warehouse. Even Wu's men had arrived to set the warehouse on fire and eliminate Wen Sui. Fortunately, Chris and the group arrived just in time to rescue Wen Sui from the flames. Fortunately, they managed to get Wen Sui to the hospital, although his condition remained critical. Shortly after, Wen Sui's grandmother and Tao Kiao came to visit him. Inside the treatment room, Chris, who was outside with the others, purposely pressed the token on the back of his neck to swap souls with Wen Sui. This way, Wen Sui could convey a final message if he ended up in danger. At that time, Chi Kwang and the others were saddened by this, even pleading with Wen Sui not to switch with Chris's soul. However, Wen Sui refused, believing that Chris also deserved to live his life. When Wen Sui tried to revert the eye sign, he couldn't exchange souls with Chris, leaving him disappointed. He now intended to go to Wu to help Chris in the mission to rescue Yuna. Upon arriving at Wu's residence, handsome Wen Sui, pretending to be Chris, demanded to know Yuna's whereabouts. Wu only showed a video of Yuna and mentioned that he would bring her to Chris after Chris agreed to follow all of Dr. Wu's orders. Hearing this, handsome Wen Sui finally admitted that he wasn't Chris, but Dr. Wu didn't seem to care. He immediately sedated handsome Wen Sui, preparing for the soul exchange operation between Chris and Lu. On the flip side, Wen Sui, who had been hospitalized, finally regained consciousness as Chris's soul had returned to his own body. Meanwhile, Chi Kwang and his friends continued to keep an eye on Wu's movements as he went to Lu's residence. From inside the car, Chi Kwang's secretary informed them that Lu had switched bodies with a younger person. This allowed the elderly man to regain his health and keep his assets since Lu didn't have any heirs. The following day, Chi Kwang and his friends paid a visit to Wen Sui to update him on Chris's condition. Several police officers also arrived to investigate the kidnapping involving Hu Bin and Pang Hu. After the police departed, Tao Kiao came inquisitively asking about the kidnapping, having overheard Wen Sui's conversations with the police. She also asked about handsome Wen Sui's whereabouts. To avoid her questions, they pretended to assist Wen Sui to the toilet. On another occasion, Lu, who now occupied Chris's body, was seen studying documents related to Chris to adapt to his new life. However, he began to feel something unusual about his new body. Meanwhile, Zan Chang went on a date with Man Qi, who was trying to gather information about Chris after Tao Kiao had sought her help. With her emotional act, Man Qi succeeded in getting Zan Chang to reveal some details about Chris, such as his international name, handsome Wen Sui. After Man Qi shared this information with Tao Kiao, her suspicions about the secrets Wen Sui and the others were keeping grew stronger. At Mr. Lu's place, Dr. Wu was conducting an examination on him, but there was nothing unusual about his new body. Mr. Lu also threatened to demand a refund if anything went wrong with the soul transfer surgery. The next day, the news on television reported that Chris, known as handsome Wen Sui, had become Mr. Lu's heir, who was supposedly deceased after the surgery. Following this news, Mr. Lu appeared on the film set and convincingly acted as handsome Wen Sui in front of many people. On another occasion, while Tao Kiao was in the car, delivering clothes for his filming, Mr. Lu suddenly moved closer and seemed like he was about to kiss her. In response, Dr. Wu immediately intervened, causing Mr. Lu to return to his seat. After Mr. Lu finished filming, Wen Sui paid him a visit and attempted to revive Chris's soul. However, Mr. Lu appeared to have no recognition of Wen Sui. Meanwhile, Dr. Wu, who saw that Wen Sui was still alive, ordered Zhongzhe to eliminate him while questioning whether the previous soul transfer operation had any issues. Before the operation, it was Wen Sui's soul in Chris's body. Sometime later, when Sui appeared to be back in the hospital, when Chi Kwang and the others visited him, Tao Kao arrived and informed him about the handsome Wen Sui she had met on set, claiming to be Chris. Upon hearing this, Wen Sui and the others decided to meet Mr. Liu and confirm the situation. Unbeknownst to them, Tao Kao, who had said her goodbyes earlier to go home, was secretly eavesdropping on their conversations outside Wen Sui's ward. The scene shifts back to Dr. Wu. At that time, he wasn't sure if Mr. Liu had swapped souls with Chris, decided to test it by offering grasshoppers to the person he believed was Mr. Liu. Surprisingly, Chris's body vomited out the grasshoppers he had just eaten because Mr. Liu's soul hadn't successfully entered Chris's body. All this time, Chris had been pretending to be Mr. Liu so that Dr. Wu wouldn't become suspicious. During this moment, he also remembered his younger sister, whom he had been searching for. Now, let's switch to the police station, where Hu Bin and Pang, who were undergoing investigations regarding the kidnapping case of Wen Sui. The police had evidence from surveillance camera footage, which eventually led to both of them being imprisoned. Hu Bin's manager later visited him to inform him that Bai had terminated their contract due to all the trouble caused by Hu Bin. Meanwhile, Wen Sui had confirmed that Chris was safe and they met in a car. During their conversation, Wen Sui asked about Chris's future plans, which involved seeking revenge on Wu for Yuna's death. Therefore, Chris asked Wen Sui and others to gather evidence of Wu's illegal research to put him behind bars. Unbeknownst to them, Wu had overheard all their conversations because he had planted a listening device in Chris's car. He then ordered his men to eliminate Chris once he returned home. Meanwhile, Chi Kwang and the rest of the group were searching for research evidence inside Wu's laboratory. Unfortunately, they couldn't find any files, so they thought that the video recording from Mr. Liu's house might serve as evidence to take Wu to the police. Without hesitation, Chris went back home and pretended to be Mr. Liu. However, Dr. Wu had realized Chris's deception and intended to drug him right then and there. Fortunately, before Dr. Wu could carry out his plan, Tao Kao arrived, claiming to bring clothes for Chris's upcoming film shoot. Chris immediately brought her to his room and asked for help from Wen Sui and the others because Dr. Wu had already discovered his true identity as Chris. In his message, Chris also mentioned that the recording was in Mr. Liu's assistant possession. After sending the message, Chris went to see Mr. Liu's assistant, who was already unconscious, to request the evidence of the recording of Dr. Wu's soul transfer operation. Not long after, Chris headed to the basement, followed by Dr. Wu and his henchmen who attempted to thwart Chris's plans. In that critical moment, Chris was compelled to confront Dr. Wu's men, who were trying to attack him to distract Dr. Wu's attention. Meanwhile, he asked Tao Kao to secure the recorded evidence. Just when some of Dr. Wu's men were about to harm her, Wen Sui came to her rescue. The police, who had been alerted by Chi Kwang, also arrived to arrest Dr. Wu and his entire gang. Not too long ago, Tao Kao handed over the recording evidence she had acquired to the police for further investigation. She then asked for the truth about what had happened to handsome Wen Sui. Wen Sui finally explained everything, and Tao Kao was visibly upset with him and the others because she felt deceived. On a different occasion, Wen Sui had a private conversation with Tao Kao to apologize and clarify his reasons for using Chris's body for school. He admitted feeling insecure about his overweight body, which led him to make that choice. Hearing this, Tao Kao expressed her disappointment in Wen Sui for not loving himself and opting to be someone else. Another day, Chris visited Wu, who was in prison, and asked about the whereabouts of Yuna's ashes. Wu agreed to reveal this information if Chris would defend him to secure his release from all charges. Chris initially agreed to Wu's request, but when Wu disclosed that Yuna's ashes were in Los Angeles, Chris became furious and decided not to support Wu. That evening, Chris met with Tao Kao to discuss her feelings for Wen Sui. She confessed that she had never disliked Wen Sui because of his weight and still had feelings for him. However, she was disappointed with Wen Sui for not loving himself. Wen Sui, who overheard Tao Kao's statement, felt relieved and touched. After helping Wen Sui clear up the misunderstanding with Tao Kao, Chris met with Chi Kwang by the river. Chi Kwang expressed his gratitude for Chris, who had become his friend and added meaning to his life. The following day, Wen Sui took Chris to meet his grandmother so Chris could bid her farewell before returning to America. Upon learning this, Wen Sui's grandmother prepared Chris's favorite food and they enjoyed a meal together. After their visit, Chris and Wen Sui chatted about the reason they could share a body, recalling that they had both once wished to see beautiful lanterns. Chris also encouraged Wen Sui to have more confidence in his own body if he wanted to approach Tao Kao again. With newfound determination, Wen Sui returned to school and confronted Pang Hu, who had been trying to bully him. In the fight, CK and others arrived to help, but it turned out that Wen Sui had successfully incapacitated Pang Hu. CK and his friends were proud of Wen Sui for standing up for himself. In the end, Chris had returned to America and was in a car after collecting Yuna's ashes. He sent a message to his friends to express his gratitude because he had been able to resolve his issues thanks to all of them. Meanwhile, Wen Sui met Tao Kao to express his feelings, and she, who also had feelings for him, finally accepted his affection. The series ends. The moral lesson from this series is if you want your crush to love you, just swap soul and body with someone who's good looking.